You can get people to do literally whatever you want with what I'm about to tell you. So please do not abuse people. Use this with the best intent for those around you and try to serve your community better. Thank you.
Today we're going to dive into the topic of how to make another person create and follow through with the deal that benefits you. Ideally, if you're sitting down in some job that requires you to create deals, structure deals, whether it's sales, whether it's something for a management position, regardless of what it is, I mean, heck, this works in the world of law enforcement, this works in medical fields, this works in a plethora of jobs out there. If you need to sit down and you need to find a way to get somebody to comply with something, especially if it's in their best interest, but if you need to get somebody to comply with something that's against their normal desires, you need to figure out how to get them to feel like they were the person to put that deal together. So that's first and foremost. That idea of making it seem like it's their idea is your goal. Making it seem like it's something they came up with is your end game for getting them to follow through with the terms of the deal. And that's going to happen from questioning. That's what this all boils down to, is questions. So if you have to ask multiple questions, what in the world questions are going to be the ones that make somebody commit, right? How do you go from being from a nag who's asking a lot of questions to the guy who's managing to get somebody else to agree to terms they may never have normally agreed to? It has to do with pretty much two questions. What? And how? What and how can give you pretty much everything you need and will get you the compliance you're looking for with almost any situation. So, to boil it down into examples, if you're a car salesman and you're sitting down trying to get somebody to agree to a certain pay structure, they love the car, they just don't know if they can make these payments, right? They're having a tough time deciding, should I take a 5-year, 6-year, or 7-year version of this loan on this car payment, because I need to be able to make it something I can afford, and honestly, even the 7-year, which brings it to the lowest monthly payment, feels like it's pushing it, I don't really know. People feel unsure when they feel like they're not comfortable with the change. They haven't thought through the repercussions, and most of us don't like to sit down and picture the long term anyway. So, what do? They want to delay. They want to hesitate. They want to take a step back and question. And even if they're dead certain that this is something they want to follow through with, they still may come to the conclusion in their head that it's time to hesitate. So, one of the examples of questions that you could ask would be something like, what would it take? Something like that. What would it take? And fill in the rest of the blank on that, which, I mean, yeah, there'd be a little bit more to that sentence, but what would it take for you to feel comfortable? What's an amount of monthly payment that would be something you know you could commit to here and now? Get an idea of something like that. The idea is when you start to get somebody giving you the answers, rather than you coming up with the ideas, you don't have to be the problem solver. Make them the problem solver. When you ask them the questions of how are we going to implement this? How are we going to make sure that if you're going to commit to this vehicle, if you're going to commit to this deal, how do we make sure it's something you'll be able to commit to? How do we make sure it's something you're comfortable with? Or who else needs to be on board with this? Means, how do we make sure everybody involved in this is going to be comfortable? If you got a husband or a wife coming in and they're doing this potentially without having to talk to their spouse, how do we make sure your spouse is on board with this? How do we make sure your spouse isn't going to make you want to turn around, bring that car back, and return it the same day you bought it? What is it going to take? What is it going to take to make sure your wife feels comfortable? What is it going to take to make sure your husband feels comfortable with sitting long term on this purchase here, on this deal here? What is it going to take to make your partners at this business feel comfortable implementing this deal, or to feel confident moving forward with this? That is the kind of question you should ask. Is one of those two versions, and almost every question can be structured in a what or how question, and it can be used to create the opportunity for them to solve the problem. Now, A great thing I recommend doing after that is immediately making sure that you reiterate or rephrase that back to them in a way that is you asking, did I hear you correctly? So, what would it take to make sure that this is a price that you can commit to? How do we make sure that you feel comfortable committing this to the long term? How do we make sure you're able to commit to this budget long term? What's something that's going to fit your budget? Something along those lines. When you ask that question and they say, you know, I guess as long as it didn't go beyond $330 a month or $300 a month, then I could probably make sure that happens. I would feel comfortable sticking with that. Okay, so it sounds like as long as we got close to that ballpark number, about $300 to $330, as long as we stayed close to that ballpark number there, you feel like you'd be comfortable to be able to commit to that long term. You'd be happy to commit to that long term. Yeah, as long as we could do that, I'd feel happy with it. And then as soon as the next objection comes up, as soon as the next portion of that phase comes up, okay, would you be opposed to getting moving forward on this? As soon as they come up with that next objection, I don't know. I guess I'd have to talk to my spouse. Okay. What would it take to make sure that your spouse feels like they understand where you're coming from here and that they're on board with this? What's it going to take to make sure that they feel comfortable with this? Well, I don't know. Let me think about that. I guess my spouse would want to know we're not spending money we don't have. Okay. Well, what's it going to take to make sure that you feel like you're sticking within that budget? It's still that $300 mark? Something like that, right? You work through those same questions. It's the same two questions or two versions of questions every time. You walk through it. And as you walk through it, reiterate it. Make sure, did I hear you correctly? And when they finally get to the point where they're saying, yeah, that all sounds good, and they can't come up with another reason why you wouldn't be able to go through with it, you just close that deal. And they came up with the solutions to that problem. So that is the big thing. You ask these questions. You ask what? You ask how, and make sure you repeat to them. Sorry for the bad handwriting. You repeat so that you understand. Okay? Repeat it to them to make sure that you understood. And when they know that you understand, when they know that you get them completely, they're going to be willing to comply with whatever terms they made for themselves, right? They feel heard, they feel understood, and they've set the terms. Why in the world would anybody back out on a deal where they set the terms, they know that they are completely understood and sympathized with or empathized with by the other side of that deal, and everything is set up the way that they structured it? Perfect. Who wouldn't follow through with that, right? Now, there may be, for whatever reason, scenarios completely out of either party's control. That happens. It doesn't mean anything when you at least make sure that time and time again, especially if we're taking into account law of large numbers, time and time again, you follow this formula, you structure enough deals the same way, you're going to guarantee the best follow through that you can find darn near anywhere. There's things you can sprinkle in there as you get more comfortable, especially unique to your industry. As you get more comfortable, you can find ways to strengthen that. But this is the basic formula that will carry out your success in structuring the deal and getting follow through. So try it sometime. See what you think. Practice on your friends, practice on your family, practice at work. Have a good one.
Hey, thank you very much for staying tuned this long if you're still here. I really appreciate you taking that time to listen to my video and just kind of think about some of the ideas I'm putting out there. My goal for this channel is to really create a community of people who share these ideas, learn from each other, grow together, and go out and help other people with this new talent, new experience, and new idea that you've been able to cultivate with a like-minded community. So please, if you had any thoughts on this, let me know what your thoughts were down in the comments. Reach out to me. I would love to find ways to make this something that's better for you, better for me, better for everybody involved. So please feel free to give me some feedback, give me some engagement there. It's going to sound like I'm asking you a lot here and you're not getting anything out of it, but I'm hoping to start making this feel like you're getting something out of this. So thank you very much. Again, have a great day, and thank you for tuning in. Have a good one.